I'd now like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System and ask the Secretary to please read the roll.
Regent Bartel. Here. Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Burmaster. Here. Regent Conley-Kiesler. Here. Regent Crane. Here. Regent Keane. Here. Regent Davis.
Here.
Regent Drew. Regent Falbo.
Here.
Regent Loftus.
Here.
Regent Opgenard. Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector. Regent Thomas.
Here.
Regent Vasquez. Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Womack. Here. A quorum is present.
Thank you very much. I would want to point out that Regent Opgenorth, who is very dedicated to his attendance at our meetings, had his car break down and he rented a 15-person university van and he is on his way. Well, it's a pleasure to be here at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. This is special for the board because while we meet here once a year, it's been a long time since we've been able to have a meeting at UWM where the students are present. So it's special for us, and I want to thank Chancellor Santiago and his staff for the hospitality they've shown us, the greetings, and making all the arrangements. Meeting here when the students are on campus is very appropriate because for these 2 days, this is definitely a student-centered meeting. And thinking about that makes me think of a number of years ago when I was sitting where Regent Loftus is sitting, and it was in the middle of a very complicated budget discussion. And next to me was our late friend, Regent Milt McPike. And I leaned over to Milt and I said, boy, this stuff is really confusing. And Milt turned to me and with the biggest hands that I've ever seen in my entire life, those hands that used to catch footballs from quarterbacks in the Washington Redskins, he put his hand on my arm and he said, no, it's not. He said, it's really simple. It's all about the kids, man. It's all about the kids. And that's what we're going to be focusing on for the next couple of days. It is all about the students. That's why we're here. They're going to be the center of our discussions. In a few moments, we will hear from Chancellor Santiago and a number of UWM students about the amazing research opportunities that are available on this campus. And later, we'll be examining ways to make the cost of textbooks more reasonable for our students and also get into a discussion on the Madison initiative for undergraduates. We'll talk about a very important subject that is always before the Board of Regents, and that is ways that we can safeguard our students from the dangers of alcohol and drug abuse, drawing, unfortunately, on the sad experiences right here at UW-Milwaukee in recent months. We're going to be talking about new degree options and career paths available to our students, including the Doctor of Nursing practice degrees, the collaborative online Bachelor of Science degrees in Sustainable Management, and others. We'll also be taking up the proposed revisions to UWS Chapters 17 and 18, the administrative rules that cover student conduct. That follows nearly 2 years of back-and-forth consultation with a broad array of stakeholders, including students and members of the general community. Our discussions will include talks about facilities and buildings that support the student experience, and among the projects we'll look at are the new residence hall at UW-Stevens Point and the remodeling of the Elmwood Center at UW-Oshkosh. So, Milt McPike was right. It's all about the students. And from our perspective, it's all about preparing the students for the competition of the 21st century knowledge economy, and that's a key component of our growth agenda for Wisconsin, which, as all of you know, is our vision for the future prosperity of this state. So with that, I would like to turn it over to UW System President Kevin Riley.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and let me add my thanks to Carlos his colleagues at UWM for hosting us. We're delighted to be here and look forward to a meeting that, as Mark said, is indeed very, very student-centered in the way we'll approach it. I wanted to let Carlos come forward. I believe he'll be introducing the first session that's on the docket for this morning on UW-Milwaukee and the role of students in research initiatives. As you know, we are in the process of building a second research institution in the UW system here at UW-Milwaukee under Carlos's fine leadership. And one of the unique opportunities that students, that undergraduates have at a research institution that's building out the way UW-Milwaukee is involvement with faculty mentors in important research projects. Some of us were present at the Posters in the Rotunda session a couple weeks ago in Madison, where undergraduate researchers from this campus and all of our campuses came with explanations of their research projects and their faculty mentors to show the public and their elected representatives in the legislature how important that connection, that research connection, is to their undergraduate education. And very often in the way these conversations get teed up, research is opposed to undergraduate education. Well, I think that's the wrong way to think about it. I think at this institution, and increasingly at all of our institutions around the system, the research component of our mission is tied directly into what undergraduates learn and what they graduate with and go out from their undergraduate experience into the wider world knowing and being able to do. So we look forward to UWM's presentation on these issues this morning. With that, I'll turn it over to the Chancellor. Carlos.
Thank you, President Riley. Delighted to see the Regents once again back in Milwaukee. I do have to admit that the changing of the dates, originally we would always meet in June. Regent Pruitt was one of the regents who said, Carlos, you know, there's a bit of false advertising here. You keep claiming that this is the second most compressed research university in the nation, and yet when we come in June, we just don't see the students. So we thought, well, let's bring the Regents on campus when we do have students, and we pushed it back in May, but there's still a little bit of false advertising, because in fact a good number of the students are in the midst of final exams. So you really, if you really want to get a sense of the hustle and bustle of the students, faculty and staff on this campus, we probably have to move it up one more month. But we're fine with the May meeting. What I want to do today, and I'll keep my remarks relatively short, is really introduce the students. But before that, give you a sense of the progress that we have made in terms of our agenda. And as you know, our agenda is related to the mission of the institution, which is both access and growth and research. First off, it's important to state that one of the things that we began when I became chancellor was to start reallocating existing state dollars that were destined and were allocated for for research in something called the Research Growth Initiative. And we wanted to reallocate those dollars and to really provide seed money, significant amount of seed money for faculty going forward. And we have done that for a number of years now. We now have enough data that we can, in fact, begin to see whether that very selective and competitive investment stream has been paying off. And if we have two cohorts of data. If you look, you'll see that the faculty that received the awards in cohort 1, we now have 2 years of data. Before they received the awards, they were generating as a group about $3 million a year. The second cohort was also generating approximately $3 million before the seed funding. Since that time, those same faculty members that have taken advantage of the Research Growth Initiative and have competed for those dollars, for the first group, it has now almost doubled the amount of research dollars they're bringing to the campus. For the second cohort, in their first year, we've already seen over a 50% increase. And that's really a tribute to the faculty. We had always thought that if we could provide a degree of seed funding to this faculty, they would be able to grow their funded research. We have also grown, with the support of this board, our doctoral programs. When I arrived in 2004, I felt given the quality and the numbers of faculty we had on this campus, the number of PhD programs were too small. We have since grown to 29 PhD programs. We need to be in the 30s for an institution of our size. Clearly, this is not an easy undertaking because PhD programs are the most expensive part of our profile, but nonetheless, we have tried to grow programs that are particularly aligned with the needs of this region. The Regents will see in the coming years new PhD programs, again, coming forward, many of them related to the expansion of the proposed two new schools, public health and freshwater sciences, but also some traditional PhD programs will be coming forward as well. We have grown our research over time. It has occurred slowly, but nonetheless we have a goal in mind, and the goal is to reach $100 million, which really is the benchmark that you need if you are to enter without a medical school, if you are in fact to enter into an exclusive club of research universities. And we have made progress in that respect. And again, it is a testimony to the faculty, because one of the messages I will leave you with is, while there is on the horizon the prospect of new investments in UWM, you've been part of the discussions around the capital budget. We did receive the 2007-2009 growth agenda money. Those investments have really not touched the campus just yet. The faculty that have been hired in the course of this year have not arrived on this campus. The facilities that we anticipate building have not been built as yet. So this increase in research dollars really is something that we have managed to do, reallocating money, changing the incentive structure a bit, and really focusing on funded research. One of the ways we do this is with our relationships within the southeastern Wisconsin, within our regional partners. We think that's hugely important, and that will be the driving force as we move forward. We have gotten a lot of private support for our initiatives, including grants programs that have been funded by many of our partners, funding for new areas of research that we're very proud of. I can list the many companies that our faculty are working with and will continue to work here with, including Rockwell Automation. We Energies is another very important partner of ours. The Blood Center of Wisconsin, which is a hugely important statewide resource. We've been doing some very good research with them. And we have big plans. We have still, however, and I caution everyone, and I indicate that while we do need to reach out into the wider community as we focus on research on the needs and the strengths of this region, we still have not, after 5 years, we still have not acquired one more acre than we had when I was here 5 years ago. We still do not have appreciably increase in the number of faculty, and we do not and have not built a new academic facility since I arrived. So we are pushing in that direction. The School of Public Health is clearly a component of our plan. We have not acquired that land to date. We are still trying. Innovation Park in Wauwatosa, next to the medical college, which I think is the most significant economic development this region will have at least in my memory here. And yet we still have not acquired the land at Innovation Park. The acquisition of both those parcels would be based on private dollars as well. And finally, the School of Freshwater Sciences, where I will be before the Harbor Commission tomorrow to make the case that I think it should be situated. It should be the gateway to water and water research in southeastern Wisconsin. The mayor is referring to southeastern Wisconsin and Milwaukee in particular as the fresh coast. Well, we will see. Is the wider community ready to basically embrace that designation and support some of the initiatives we are trying to propose. So there are no guarantees. We will nonetheless make the opportunity available to southeastern Wisconsin and see if we move forward. There are a number of individual initiatives. One that has been gaining a lot of support, particularly in Washington, D.C., through the National Science Foundation, is our creation of a Center for Advanced Water Technology. I think increasingly beyond the frontiers of Wisconsin, there is a sense that Milwaukee has a lot to contribute in terms of fresh water. In terms of the support for the institution, we have made some gains. Clearly, the 07-09 budget and the growth agenda were very, very important to us. We will continue to press the case, although we are also cognizant that this is a very, very difficult budget environment. It's not only Wisconsin, it's at the national level. We will continue to raise money. The flexibility that the capital plan that this board has supported and this governor has supported are hugely important to us. And it is, from my perspective, it is a vote of confidence that speaks more than the amount, which we're very pleased with, but it really is more than the amount. It's the flexibility and the perspective that this is the institution to invest in to grow the research in support of what the state is trying to do. I'll close my comments with an interesting debate that's going on in the state of Texas. The state of Texas has two major public research universities, the University of Texas and Texas A&M. And they are in the legislatures in the throes of a discussion about what other institutions might become their third public research university. And there are 7 different institutions vying for that, including the University of Houston. And it is a dogfight. If you ever saw a legislature fight over the creation of a third research university, it is pretty incredible, because every part of that state wants that third institution to be in their part of the state. I'm delighted that in Wisconsin the playing field is much more level. You don't have 7 institutions vying for those kinds of resources. But to give you a sense of the magnitude of what they are trying to do, the Higher Education Commissioner of Texas indicated that it would probably take 20 to 40 years to accomplish, to really get that third research university at the point where the state needs it. They have a program that they're moving forward. Every dollar that institution raises, the state would match it with state dollars for every private dollar, and it would need at least $100 million in annual public infusion. We can do that here with a lot less in a lot shorter time period. I think the focus that we are giving our research is really going to allow us to compete, compete with other institutions that are potentially getting a much larger investment. And I need not tell you that the state of Texas is in a much better financial shape than a lot of the states across the union. That's where we are. That's what we've done. That's what we will continue to do and move forward. It is a pleasure for me, indeed a real pleasure, to introduce some of our students and what they are trying to accomplish here. And how better to demonstrate the research emphasis at UW-Milwaukee than to feature our students. We've gathered 4 individuals today who give an indication of the breadth of the research activities here at UWM. We'll be hearing from an engineer, a chemist, documentarian, and a very accomplished college senior. I will be introducing each of them and ask them to come forward and give their presentation. First, we'll hear from Michael Bresky. With more and more sophisticated methods of creating magnetic resonance images of the human body, we have more and more challenges to keeping those images clear. Mike has been working with our faculty on a novel solution, which I will let him tell you about. And he anticipates graduating in August with a Master of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from our College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. Please welcome Michael Bresky.
See where I end up here.
So
Hello, my name is Mike Bresky, and the topic of my research is the control of a human head motion phantom for an MRI machine. So, obviously, the introduction from Chancellor Santiago. Thank you. Obviously, I'm Mike Bresky. I'm from Greenfield, Wisconsin. My major, again, is electrical engineering, and my faculty advisor is Brian Armstrong. So, why am I here at UW doing research? Well, I did my undergrad at a little institution down the road called Milwaukee School of Engineering. And during senior year, when I was interviewing for jobs, I found out that I didn't really like any of my prospects. I didn't find the positions challenging, or I didn't find them interesting. So I also applied here at UWM because, for the most part, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do control systems, robotics, but I couldn't find a job that would let me do so. So, what research am I doing here at UWM? Well, like my title I said, it's the control of a human head motion phantom for an MRI machine. Well, in simple terms, I'm building a robot that we can place in the bore of an MRI machine and very precisely know where this motion phantom is. So, a robot that replicates the motion of a human head. Why? Well, to answer the why, I'll provide you with some background into the whole project that my group is working on. So first, start with the MRI machine itself. Current generation MRI technology has a resolution of about half the width of a human hair, which is fantastic because we can, with the use of functional MR imaging, scan the brain while it's performing a function and find links between brain activity and bodily functions. Now imagine the following. What if I told you that for the rest of my presentation, you couldn't move any part of your body more than the width of a human hair? Oh, so none of you. So 100% of you couldn't do that, and I can't either, for that matter. But, and my presentation isn't even as long as an MRI scan. Clinical scans can take about 20 minutes, and research scans can take up to an hour. And even worse, our group is being funded by the National Institute of Drug Addiction because they want to scan drug addicts' brains in an attempt to find links between drug addiction and brain function. Can you imagine telling a drug addict to stay still for an hour? Right? Exactly. So, and this is indeed a very real problem because an image with motion artifacts versus an image without motion artifacts is the difference between finding an operable brain tumor and saving someone's life versus not. So how do we fix the problem? Well, there already exists some commercially developed motion tracking technologies. And in fact, our partners are already using some. But it has 2 cameras, a lengthy setup process, and setup and calibration process, and is quite expensive. Often whole rooms are built exclusively for the purpose of housing these systems. So, we can develop our own. And in fact, my advisor is doing so. So, our system is quite simpler. We have 1 camera, we have a target about the size of a postage stamp, and we can pick it up and move it without loss of calibration. But we still have a problem. In our lab on campus, we have an optical bench and a tilting rotary table that we use to eliminate noise during testing. And we can't just pick that up and move it directly into the bore of an MRI scanner, because for one, it's too large, it wouldn't fit. The optical table itself is 4 feet by 8 feet and weighs like 3 tons. And 2, it's all ferrous material. And the magnetic field inside the magnet room is about 60,000 times the strength of that of Earth's. It would suck any metal directly into it, causing obviously millions of dollars worth of damage to the machine, as well as the fact, time to repair. So this is one of our magnets that we're using. It's actually at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And you can see that it's also very confined space. If you look on the bed of the scanner, the cage-like device is the head coil, and that's used to enhance the resolution of scans of the brain itself. And then on the right, we have the phantom. And I say motion phantom, which is actually kind of a misnomer because I'll be the person moving it rather than, or the robot will be the thing that's moving, that's adding the motion to the system. The phantom itself is basically just a piece of plastic that has some known internal structure. And if you take a slice of it in an MRI, you can tell the orientation of the phantom itself because you know the internal structure and you can test that back and forth between the image and the known. So, where do I come in? Well, so this robot will allow us to create an MR-compatible test bed that will, with very high accuracy, tell us where the motion phantom is. Again, in real time. So, the robotic motion phantom becomes the keystone in this project because it will allow us to validate the scanning process and coordinate between all the data from the motion tracking systems. So, and in the end, we want to be able to create adaptive motion algorithms to account for a patient's motion and fly the MR scanning process to account for this. And the robot isn't actually all that complex. It only has 2 degrees of freedom, and basically means it has 2 ways to move. And one is a shrugging motion. It moves simply like this. And the other one is it rocks the head side to side, up over the shoulders, so like this. So we're not moving very fast or even very far. In fact, we have 2 different kinds of motion trajectories. And one of them is about a 1 centimeter deflection, so at about 1 hertz, so 1 cycle per second, so very slow. And the second one is moving about a deflection of 1 millimeter at about 10 cycles per second, so a little bit quicker, but much, much smaller. And with this operation, we can simulate the motion of a human for a number of conditions. Simple tremors to shivers to nervous presentation givers and even Parkinson's disease. And so no, that is not the magnet at the Medical College of Wisconsin, although the room kind of looks quite similar. But so how is this research rather than something we can purchase off the shelf? Well, this is difficult for a number of reasons. For one, we need very precise knowledge of where our system is. On the order of we have about 100 microns of accuracy, so about the width of a human hair in terms of uncertainty in the entire drive mechanism. We also have to deal with the fact that we can't just put regular electric motors into the magnet room, or for that matter, unshielded electronics, unshielded power cables, and so on, because if they don't get sucked into the magnet, there's a chance that they can both send and receive RF interference and still ruin the MR image. So if we just put anything in there, even if it does, we can use some metals in the magnet room, titanium, stainless steel, brass, copper, etc. But the problem is that they might put interference into the MR images, and then, therefore, our solution is no better than any other. So we're using lots of very interesting technology, from custom-made non-magnetic air motors to laser triangulation sensors, and to build a robot that will be almost wholly plastic. And also our software requirements are very difficult as well. So it all must run in real time because we need to be able to coordinate our data with the motion tracking systems and the MRI machine itself. So we also need to know very precisely when our pose data was taken. And our pose is basically a 6-degree of freedom measurement, and it says a couple things. It's X, Y, Z, and then pitch, roll, and yaw. So that's the only information we're sending back to the scanner itself. And the MRI machine operates on timescales in the microsecond range. So we need to be able to align the MR image with the image we took with our data from the robot. So now the almighty payoff. What do I get from my research? Well, first, an immense amount of knowledge and skills that I didn't have before. I realize I'm an electrical engineer, but I came from a hardware background, which means all of the programming of this project has been quite difficult. That being said, I have a pretty good understanding of Linux, real-time software requirements, device drivers, communication protocols, embedded system design, and so on. And also, figuring out the compressed air requirements for all the air motors hasn't been a cakewalk either. Because obviously I'm not a mechanical engineer. There's also the possibility of earning a patent for the device, which I think would be pretty awesome. As I said in the beginning, that I wasn't really excited about the job prospects that I had in the first place, and now I have an immense amount of opportunities in front of me, from UAVs to medical robotics to just standard control systems, aeronautics. I mean, the list goes on and on. And lastly, I think that it's often the case that once we get settled into a day-to-day routine, we lose the ambition, the drive we once had for trying new things and finding out the way things work. So sitting in a research lab, really allows me to know that I shouldn't be afraid of the unknown. That since I've tackled something so far beyond the skill set that I started with, that I shouldn't be able to be afraid to do so again. So thank you.
The work of Veronica Rigo is associated with many of the larger research efforts growing in importance at UWM and as well as in southeastern Wisconsin. Her research is in the area of real-time and remote monitoring of freshwater ecosystems using optical fiber sensors. She is one of our students who can claim her academic work has literally been done in both hemispheres. She will be receiving her doctorate in chemistry on May 17th. Please welcome Veronica Rigo.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. Well, as Chancellor Santiago said, my name is Veronica Rigo, and originally I'm from Cordoba, Argentina, South America. And I used to spend my my young days just like that. But then I grew up, and I decided to become a chemist. So I just moved to the state of San Luis in Argentina, and I got my degree in chemistry, especially in physical chemistry. At the moment when I was doing my senior thesis, I was working with a professor who also was working in collaboration with UW-M's professors. And I found the program, especially for physical chemistry, very interesting and challenging. But there was a problem. I didn't speak English. So I spent like almost a year studying English, passing all this exam, and I decided to come here. So in 2004, I joined the chemistry department. Oh, sorry, I missed my favorite part. Yes, I came here, and I love to call this place my nice North Pole. So I joined the chemistry department in 2004. And since then, I'm working with a project which combines nanotechnology and optical fiber sensor especially for environmental-based monitoring systems. The group is under the supervision of the Professor Peter Geisinger. So, in particular, we are working in our group with optical fiber sensor for real-time and remote monitoring of freshwater ecosystems. Why this is important? Let's explain this by with a local example. Let's suppose that contaminants or toxins are introduced in the Great Lakes, in particular Lake Michigan, for instance. Now, we need a system that allows us to control real-time and a continuous monitoring of this toxin in this huge water body, not only for environmental protection, public health, but also for homeland security. So, in particular, I'm working with an optical fiber that allows to monitor in real-time and remotely dissolved oxygen concentrations in water stream. Why dissolved oxygen? Well, this is a vital parameter. It's very important in many areas as environmental, medicine, industry, also in medical, like surgery or breath monitoring system, chemistry. There is a lot of examples about application of dissolved oxygen. Now, let's go back to the example of introducing contaminants on the Lake Michigan. Now, let's suppose that the contaminant is introduced over there. Now, in this huge water body system, the chances that the contaminant cause some harm, damage is very little because of the huge body. And the chances also they are detected before it reaches the water distribution system of Milwaukee is also, there's a huge chance of detected. But what happens if the toxins or the contaminants are introduced exactly in the water distribution system of Milwaukee? Now, with conventional methods, especially those chemical methods, the possibility of detect in real time and in the exactly position where the contaminant or toxin is introduced is almost impossible. By the time that the samples are collected in all the different positions along of the water distribution substance, and by the time that all the chemical tests are completed, the damage it will be already done. So our goal is to create an optical fiber sensor combined with nanotechnology to create a sensor array, as shown here, with different sensors located at different positions of the water distribution system in the Milwaukee City. Now, using this combination of non-conventional octave and nanochemistry, we are allowed to detect in real time and the specific location where the toxin was introduced. And this is very important because it allows us for a fast and a target countermeasurement. Okay, so how this optical fiber works? Well, in general, we're using an optical fiber very similar for that of we're using in communication. And as basic principles, the light on the optical fiber travels about total internal reflection. That means that if we send light in one end of the fiber, we can detect the transmitted light at the other end of the fiber. Now, for sensing purpose, what we have done is we have placed sensor molecule at a specific location all along the optical fiber. Now, using this principle, the light can be absorbed by this sensor molecule at that particular location. After an absorption of the light by those sensor molecules, the molecule it will fluoresce. Now, this fluorescent intensity can be transmitted all over the fiber and detected as a power loss at the end of the fiber. Now, what happens in real time and in a real situation? Let's suppose that we have a contaminant, in my case, dissolved oxygen. So this guy came in contact with the sensor molecules, they will interact. Now, since that we are using laser technology, we can catch or we can monitor this interaction real time. Now, after interaction of the toxin or any parameters with the sensor molecule, what is going to happen, the intensity or the signal of the sensor molecule will decrease. And that can be detected at the end of the fiber as a decrease in the power of the fiber itself. Now, this is working okay, but some disadvantages is that most of the sensor molecule, the intensity of the sensor molecule are quite low, especially in water phase. Now, one idea to improve the performance of the sensor came up with this development of nanotechnology. So the idea it was to place some nanoparticles close to this sensor molecule, actually in a specific distance of the sensor molecule. And using this nanoparticles property, we can enhance the signal of the sensor molecules, which allow us for an ultra-fast and an ultra-sensitive monitoring of different toxins or contaminants. So sensor vision looks really? Well, this is a transmission electron microscopy of our sensor vision in an optical fibers. Here you can see some nanoparticles coated with a sensor molecule. Actually, if you take a look to a transmission electron microscopy, here we can see the metal nanoparticles. As surrounding the nanoparticles, we can see the sensor molecules placed at a specific distance to get this signal enhancement. Now, using nanochemistry, we can tune the shape, we can change the shape of these nanoparticles from spherical to triangular, nanorod, nanowires. There are a lot of shapes. What is the deal with this shape? Well, changing the shape, we can optimize the system between our nanoparticles and our sensor molecule to get a maximum enhancement on intensity. It turns out that for dissolved oxygen sensing, our molecule, our sensor molecule, and using silver nanotriangles, we have got an enhancement of the signal intensity of the sensor 30 times bigger than that without metal. So this is very important for us for this ultra-sensitive and ultra-fast monitoring of different contaminants. As an example, how one of our data show here the response of our sensor in function of the dissolved oxygen concentration. We can see that the linear dynamic range goes up to 99 parts per million. And the important thing is like we are be able to detect any change in the dissolved oxygen concentration in water substance, because the normal values of dissolved oxygen concentration range between 4 and 5. Any value below that is quite harmful for the ecosystem. Right now in my group we are trying to develop more sensors, especially for toxic metal like cadmium, copper, and zinc. And also we are interested in looking for sensors that be able to monitor biological threats as ricin and Botox. In particular, this summer after graduation, I will be working and will keep working on this development of sensor arrays to monitor not only dissolved oxygen but all of these toxic metals and biological threats. And I will be combining the nanotechnology with this already developed sensor for ultra-fast and ultra-sensitive measurement of these parameters. So thank you very much for your attention.
Now, I've noticed that some of you aren't taking notes. We will have an exam later in the day. Joseph Sacco this summer will earn his Master of Fine Arts from the Milton and Lillian Peck School of the Arts. His latest documentary, which we will see short segments of today, is being made through Doc-UWM. Doc-UWM is a documentary media center based in the UWM Film Department that provides students the opportunity to work on professional productions and learn the art, craft, and business of making media. Pleased to introduce to you Joe Sacco.
Good morning. Thank you, Chancellor Santiago, and everyone for having me. As an artist, I rarely have the chance to wake up before noon, so it's definitely an honor to be here today. As the Chancellor said, my name is Joe Sacco, and I'm an MFA student. I'm here to share with you my work with Doc-UWM. Our film department is renowned as one of the best places in the country to learn the art and craft of filmmaking. Doc-UWM is a documentary media center, as the Chancellor stated, in the department that provides students the opportunity to work on professional productions while learning the art and business of making media. Doc-UWM gives students the opportunity to work with internationally recognized documentary filmmakers and collaborate on a range of projects, from feature-length documentaries for public television broadcast to short-form videos that raise awareness about a variety of contemporary political and social issues. Most funding for Doc-UWM comes from external research dollars that have totaled roughly $700,000 in the 3 years it's been in operation. Our projects have taken students all over the globe, from filming with urban track clubs in Milwaukee, to digging through the National Archives, to trekking through the jungles of Laos, as you will see in the short clip that I'm about to show you. Over 300 students, both undergraduate and graduate, have made over 60 videos on 12 projects, ranging from short 2-minute pieces working with the Poetry Foundation on Poetry Everywhere, which was broadcast on buses across the country, to hour-long films such as our collaboration with the Wisconsin Center for Jewish Learning to make Chosen Towns, a film broadcast statewide on public television about Jews in Wisconsin's small towns. Each of you should have a copy of some of the videos that we've made. I also have a complimentary copy for you, Chancellor, and I'll get a signed copy for you after the presentation. As students of all skill levels, we produce, direct, edit, and research our films completely in-house. Working with a variety of partners allows us to express our creative voices as artists while also living up to professional standards set by the industry. In the coming semesters, Doc-UWM will also be working with the Greater Milwaukee Committee, the Milwaukee 7 Water Council, the Great Lakes Water Institute, and the Great Lakes Water Institute to create a series of informative and entertaining short documentaries showcasing Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin as a world water hub. 30 to 40 students will create 80 to 90 short videos for this project that will be put on a website designed to attract more researchers, investors, and businesses to the Milwaukee region. In addition to these projects, I'm also proud to say that my graduate thesis work, currently titled Finding Home, has become the largest UW-M project to date. Finding Home is the story of a young Hmong American woman, Dao Chang, who is also an undergraduate student and filmmaker here at UW-M, who takes a journey to find her identity. But when she can't find the answers from her community here in Wisconsin, she eventually looks for them in Laos. What she discovers is that her identity isn't buried in the soil of either place, but is instead what she makes of it. I'm just curious, how many of you are familiar with Hmong history? Okay, quite a few of you. All right, about half. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar, the Hmong are a tribal minority group from the mountain of Laos that were employed by the CIA during Vietnam. Once they were employed, they were promised refuge if the United States lost the Vietnam War, but unfortunately that promise was ultimately broken, and thousands of Hmong were forced to flee to Thailand, some of them eventually making it to the United States. Most people only know about the Hmong from stereotypes that they see on the news, especially in Wisconsin. So with this film, we hope to share their point of view with as wide an audience as possible. With a budget of $250,000 granted to us by the Arizona Community Trust, a team of 3 undergraduate students and myself have spent 2 years researching and filming over 250 hours of footage, both in Wisconsin and in Laos, all of which will be edited down for a 1-hour broadcast that we hope to complete in December 2009. Some members of our team have also received support from the Office of Undergraduate Research, from the UROP program, and our work has brought us in touch with archives across the country. I would now like to show you a short clip from the project. In this clip, our main character, Dao, who was born in Laos, let me start over, sorry. Our main character, Dao, was born in Laos, but her mother died in a refugee camp before her family moved here. So in this clip, it opens up with Dao talking with UW-M's Hmong Studies Director, Professor Chia Vang, about what to expect when she goes back to Laos, and then it jumps to a scene where Dao visits her birthplace for the first time.
Before the Vietnam War, Hmong mostly lived in the mountains, and they're more isolated. They're not as integrated into Lao society. But it's been 30-something years. We were born into a place where our life was determined to be something very different from what you and I are doing today. I mean, the war changed our destiny in many ways, right?
Tại hai giờ ở chỗ ăn luôn sao kì nhấp thì nữa
ngon ta
có phù hợp chọn ạ nữa tên cá dần khác á thì là chỉ tụ có tôi xa tay vào dùng nên chậm một ta cho cô ít lên.
She said that this is where I was born. And when we left, she was really upset that we all left and she was by herself. It's sad to see what became like your old house and stuff. Like you come here hoping to see like something, and it's actually just nothing. You know, it's just like a memory, like somebody's memory. But it's not even your memory, you know. It's like make-believe, you know. Like, I'm looking at it, but I don't see anything.
Dạ, cho nên quá thì mấy con
In addition to working closely with the Hmong community of Wisconsin, our aim is to distribute this film through festivals and extensive outreach partnerships, as well as putting it on public television. My work with DocuWM has been invaluable in helping me incorporate professionalism into my films. And I'm eternally grateful to everyone in the Peck School of the Arts who have helped me to make this project a reality. As a filmmaker and future professor, I plan on bringing the values and experience I've gained into the classroom so that every student I teach has the same awesome opportunities that I've been given. Thank you very much.
Finally, we're very happy to give you a glimpse of what is possible through our Office of Undergraduate Research here at UWM. We're encouraging our undergraduate students to become involved in creating knowledge by connecting them to appropriate faculty members. Mina Said is a senior in the College of Letters and Sciences and will be receiving his bachelor's degree with commencement honors on May 17th. After you see his presentation, you'll understand why his next planned academic stop will be medical school. Please welcome Mina Said.
Well, good morning. As Chancellor Santiago has introduced me, my name is Mina Said, and I'm a senior, and will be graduating in 10 days with a degree in biology and a certificate in adolescent and childhood studies. Ever since my transfer here to UWM from the University of Illinois Chicago about 3 years ago, I've been really interested in working with children, and I've really been pleased with the amount of undergraduate research opportunities available to students here. I started doing research through the UROP program, where I got introduced to pediatric research. And as my interest grew, I found a new research initiative that focused primarily on my main interest, which was children. It's called the U-REACH program. There we go. It's called the U-REACH program, and for about a year I've been working in that program. It's been a tremendous learning experience and an integral part in my development as a student and as a person, really. I've recently accepted to Rush University Medical School, and I will be attending there next fall. And I'm confident that my experiences here at UWM, both in the classroom and in research, have really prepared me for medical school and for my future career as a physician. Dr. Merchant, the researcher and mentor that I've been working alongside for the past 3 years, is with us here today. We work in the neuromotor development lab in the Pavilion building here on campus, and we are studying infants who have a diagnosis called spina bifida. And so what is spina bifida? It is a developmental birth defect in which the the spinal canal fails to properly close. And oftentimes that spinal cord may protrude from the malformed vertebrae that usually enclose the spinal cord. And so if you imagine that spinal cord as the information superhighway that the brain uses to communicate with the rest of the body, a lesion in that spinal cord or a barricade in that highway creates a lack of communication between the brain and the spinal cord, and between the spinal cord and the rest of the body. And this lesion usually occurs in the lower back, an area that usually controls your muscles in the legs, the hips, the knees and the thighs, etc. And so as you can imagine, infants who suffer from spina bifida often have little control of their legs and are often unable to walk independently. And so in an effort to help these infants walk, Dr. Merchant and I have been using a treadmill to study the infant's ability to regain some of these ambulatory functions. And so the question that our research asks really is, what are the effects of treadmill stepping on infants who have spina bifida? And when we ask this question, we are wondering, what improvements can we make? Can we help them regain some of the muscle control that they otherwise wouldn't have? And can we help them strengthen some of the weak neuromotor connections that they already have? So now I'm going to show you a 10-second video or so of an infant who has spina bifida, a 6-month-old, who is stepping on a treadmill. And you will notice that both her feet suffer from deformities as many other infants who have spina bifida do, but this does not disable her legs from moving. So let's see what happens. All right, that's okay. So the most important thing to notice about this video here is that despite her disability, despite her deformities, the video didn't play all the way through, but despite these things, she was still able to take a step. If you were to see it a couple seconds later, that right foot does come through. And that's a tremendous amount of stimulus to the brain and to the spinal cord. And so one of the goals of our research is to determine what sort of factors or what conditions will help them step the most when they're on the treadmill. So we developed a set of conditions here on the left, conditions that we expose the infant to while they're on the treadmill. Something like loading, which puts weights on the feet while they're walking, or friction or Velcro, a Velcro belt that's actually used and keeps the infant's foot stuck to the belt when they take that step, and it extends their hip, and it may activate muscles that usually wouldn't be activated. And so the infants come in with their families once for single sensory conditions, once for double sensory conditions, which is just a combination of the single sensory, and then finally for a manual assistance trial, which requires that I move the infant's feet, as you can see here in the picture. And this really drives that information up to the spinal cord and to the brain, and it may prime their nervous system for future stepping. During these data trials, we are also collecting information from 6 infrared emitting cameras around the room and specialized markers, as you will see here. When this image is reduced, we can see the infant's legs moving in space, and it allows us to analyze the trajectory of their legs and the motion of their legs while they're stepping. Most importantly, though, we also use an EMG machine. That's not pictured here, but the EMG is placed on their legs and allows us to monitor the muscle activity that's going on during their stepping, which is very important because we are trying to determine what muscles are we activating, are we stimulating, and if this activity is increasing over the time of trials. The reason that visual flow here is circled is that that condition was of particular interest to me. Imagine yourself standing on a treadmill that has a solid black belt. It would be hard for you, let alone an infant, to tell whether that belt is moving or not because of the solid color. But if you pattern the belt, let's say black and white checkered, it would be easy for you or the infant to distinguish that that belt is moving. And that creates the illusion that they're moving forward in space, which could provide an even stronger stimulus while they're on the treadmill. And so the question that asks is, can we drive stepping using visual flow information? Or can we get them to step more when they're feeling as though they are moving forward in space as given through that patterned belt? And so our condition was a white belt, a black belt, and a black and white checkered belt to see where, if anywhere, they stepped more. We used the same age groups, the younger and the older group. Some of the results of this research suggest that, in fact, when the infants are looking at the pattern belt, they are stepping more, as you can see on the right side of the graph here. And this increase in stepping just means more stimulus, more information up to the brain and spinal cord, which may lead to a better chance of recovery and improving their ability to walk in these infants who have some degree of paralysis. And so when research seemed tedious and sometimes boring, I'd be sitting for hours coloring at belts and clicking away at seemingly endless data. I would take into account that despite the amount of work, amount of time, amount of money that goes into research, really doesn't even compare to the improving the quality of life of thousands of children, which is really priceless. The research is an ongoing thing, and it's done in conjunction with the University of Michigan. We are now just beginning to look at possible in-home intervention, bringing the treadmill into home and see if parents can use this to help these infants walk. Although I am graduating, I will continue to work with Dr. Merchant on a manuscript that will be submitted for publication on the infant visual flow research that we've already had an opportunity to present at national conferences during my undergraduate career. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause to Mike, Veronica, Joe, and Nina. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you the progress report on building the research university of the future. I have a few housekeeping announcements before turning the meeting back over to President Bradley. First, the next hour of presentations about book rentals and combating alcohol and drug abuse, particularly on the UWM campus, will take place here in the Wisconsin room. Lunch today will be served following that session, approximately at noon. Lunch will be served in the UWM ballroom, which is down one flight of stairs into the west, and we will have staff providing directions. We will have an international buffet served in stations, and we thought the international menu was appropriate given the international reach of our research. And this evening, you are invited to a 5 p.m. reception at our new Student Welcome Center in Vogel Hall, which is a few buildings northeast of here, and once again, we will have staff members to help provide directions. Back to you, President Bradley.
Good. Thank you very much, Chancellor Santiago, and thank you very much, students, for the time you took to prepare the materials. Excellent presentations. Well, we will now close our board meeting, and in this room, I believe, the Education Committee is going to have a meeting, and all regions invited, so we can stay right here, and I would turn it over to our esteemed Chairwoman, Regent Danae Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brad. The joint meeting of the Education and the Business, Finance, and Audit Committees will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Regent Davis.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Burmaster. Here. Regent Connolly-Kiesler. Here. Regent Crane. Here. Regent Keane. Here. Regent Falvo.
Here.
Regent Loftus.
Here.
Regent Spector. Regent Thomas.
Here.
Regent Womack. Here. And others. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As Regents, we have been hearing from many constituents and above all, UW students, on the spiraling cost of textbooks. This has been a problem for many years, and the current economic climate exacerbates the problem for students and their families. Today, we will hear from Senior Vice President Rebecca Martin and Associate Vice President Stephen Collison on what the UW system is doing to improve textbook affordability. There is some immediate action which we will be asked to take today, approving interim guidelines to make textbooks more affordable that we hope all UW institutions will follow. We will also hear the long-term plan, and I want to turn it over now to Senior Vice President Martin, wherever she went.
Good morning. Here I am. I'm pleased to be bringing together this month the two committees to discuss the UW Systems Action Plan for making textbooks more affordable. We know that this is an issue about which regents and students in particular have demonstrated great concern in recent months. This is not a new problem, but the economic downturn has brought it into greater focus for UW institutions and educational providers nationally. Today, we will ask you to approve a set of guidelines, interim guidelines that propose actions for all UW campuses that they will be encouraged to follow in bringing about some immediate relief to students from rising textbook costs. In addition, the federal government has taken steps to contain the burden textbook costs places on students and their families as part of the Higher Education Opportunity Act of 2008. Effective July 1, 2010, higher education institutions will be required to disclose in their course schedules to the maximum extent practicable the International Standard Book Number, or the ISBN, of every required and recommended textbook and supplemental materials, as well as retail price information. Textbook publishers will be required to provide faculty with information on price and copyright dates of 3 previous editions, as well as any substantial revisions between a new edition and prior iterations, whether the textbook is available in any other format and at what price, and to supply textbooks in both bundled and unbundled formats. While the federal mandate provides additional impetus for action, the truth is that the UW system has been taking a number of steps in recent years to stem textbook costs. Before I talk about what we're doing on the academic side, I'd like to turn to my colleague, Senior Vice President Tom Andres, to share with you briefly some of the actions we're taking on the business side of the house.
Thank you. One of the things I wanted to do first was congratulate the academic staff reps, Rebecca and her staff, on kind of moving more quickly in terms of the interim guidelines that you're going to look at today. We've certainly been looking at these things for some time, but I think as they're moving through now, they're acknowledging the importance in terms of cost and cost containment. I have 2 things that I want to relate to, and very, very brief. and one I think ties in with some of the activities we've already been taking. From a cost standpoint, a lot of things have been happening, and I think as we look at our rental program, and I know we've talked about this at some length, it is one of the leaders in the country. That is the rental, the textbook program. Can it be better? Certainly. Can it be broadened? Really depends on a number of conditions. But I think we want to acknowledge right now that as a form of containing costs in select areas, it's extremely important. We have 7 universities that are going through that right now that have that implemented. We have 2 colleges. We have 2 colleges that are in a pilot rental program, and we have others that are considering it. So that is one continuing feature that we think is important to acknowledge. Second, the bookstore role and expectation. There's a number of areas in the guidelines that talk about the role of the bookstore. And there are a number of pieces where they're going to have to adapt and be able to provide information that's timely and certainly in greater depth. One of the things that are going to be really important for the bookstore is getting information in a timely fashion so that they can move forward, they can do all that they've got to do in terms of ordering books, or at least understanding where the used books are versus new books versus all the other iterations that exist in conjunction with faculty and staff needs. So a big part of what we're going to be dealing with, we hope, is looking closely at the early adoption program. And again, I know that's been discussed because that will help the bookstores substantially. And those are the 2 main points on cost and hopefully cost containment.
On the academic side, the interim set of guidelines will allow us to be still more proactive, both in meeting the federal requirement and in providing relief to our students. Stephen Collison, Associate Vice President for Faculty and Academic Programs, has taken the lead in developing the interim guidelines, working very closely with our faculty representatives, our academic staff representatives, the student representatives, and the provosts. Before turning to him to go over the proposed guidelines, I want to let you know about the process we will follow as we move towards establishing a UW system and Regents policy on textbook affordability and cost containment. This is a very complex issue. We are very sensitive to the fact that the greatest impact is on our students. All of our institutions have been working closely with student leaders to ascertain what would be most immediately helpful to students and where students can and should take the lead in this initiative. We also need to be attentive to the faculty perspective as we move forward because that also plays a major role in this issue. Implicit in the faculty's authority over the curriculum is the right to determine their own syllabi and the appropriate required books and textbooks to support the coursework. Faculty members are concerned with the rising cost of textbooks and the financial impact on their students. They are cognizant of the very complex economic and legal or copyright issues at stake here for the publishing industry and for the authors of the textbooks. We also know that rapidly changing knowledge in many fields is an important issue, and this has a significant impact on the selection of textbooks. As we work to bring you a policy sometime next year, we will need to provide for full consultation with the faculty and a timeline that ensures that the UW system's governance process is carefully involved in this work. In other words, adoption of a Regent policy will need to balance some of the competing interests that we know are present in this environment, as well as respect faculty governance. Additional vetting will take place with other pertinent constituent groups, seeking wide input into drafting a policy that is both reasonable and forward-looking. And when we're done, we'll bring a draft of that policy to the Education Committee and the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee for their consideration, presumably in late fall or early winter. At the same time, we didn't want to let that much time pass without providing some support and guidance to our campuses in dealing with these issues, strengthening the work that they have already begun in making students, faculty, bookstores, and others aware of the issues and providing some framework for dealing with them. And so what we are proposing today are an interim set of guidelines that will help us, that we would hope to be able, with your support, to put in place for the fall to carry us through this interim period with the hopes that we will be able to have a full policy in place to coincide with the federal guidelines, which will begin a year from now in July of 2010. So I'd now like to turn this over to Associate Vice President Collison, who will review those interim guidelines with you. And at the end of his presentation, he and Tom and I would all be very happy to answer any questions you might have. Stephen.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning. I think it will help my presentation if I can just make one request of you. I want you to think about your last dinner experience at Wendy's. Just keep that in mind. We'll get to it and I'll tell you how it is connected with this whole textbook issue. And you're probably wondering what is the connection, but I'm going to assure you I will make that connection very soon. Let me I'll move through these two slides quickly because I think they've been discussed already. But let me start from the point just to say that there are several things that our institutions are already doing as far as making textbooks affordable. On some campuses, they are adopting they have schedules that will allow for the adoption of textbooks early. Then 7 of our comprehensives do have rental programs, 2 of our colleges rental programs, as well as 2 pilot programs have just begun. And now for the guidelines. I want to first thank the faculty and the academic staff representatives for their input in this process, as well as my colleagues, the provost, for their contribution to this process. Under these interim guidelines, if approved, interim guideline A will encourage all institutions within the UW system to develop schedules that would permit early adoption of textbooks. The advantage there is that when textbooks are adopted much earlier, students do have the opportunity to shop around and try to get the best price. When faculty members place orders with the bookstores for course material under guideline B, the bookstores will provide faculty members the current information in terms of price to those faculty members, which then will be transferred to students. Under interim guideline C, faculty members as well as instructional staff are encouraged to use the same textbook, especially where they are teaching the same class for multiple semesters, to the extent possible. And then interim guideline D, faculty and academic staff are encouraged to order new textbooks only if the content has changed significantly. Under E, this is where the Wendy's connection comes in. When you go through the line at Wendy's, you ask for number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 1 would be your cheeseburger, biggie fries, and biggie drink. But also, you can decide that you want to have them individually. You just want a sandwich. You don't want the entire package or the sandwich just with water. You can do that. You have that option. And so, but in higher education, we call it bundling. When you bundle several materials to come with the textbook, we call that bundling, not combo, as the Wendy we use that. And so, faculty members are encouraged to seek the availability of unbundled materials as well as bundled materials, so that students have the option to choose between those. And if bundled materials are assigned, then it needs to be made very clear to the students whether in fact they need all components of that bundle or can they purchase individual components of that bundle. That will be under the interim guideline F. G, when it is available, faculty are encouraged to allow students to purchase electronic versions of textbooks. And finally, interim guideline H, institutions are encouraged to look for creative ways to lessen the financial hardships for college textbook purchases. And that can be done by having some targeted scholarships or financial aid or student-led activities such as book swaps or rental bookstores that are profitable or that actually make economic sense to have bookstores that do rent texts. I do have some handouts which give a little bit more detail on these summarized guidelines. They are over there on the desk. I think Rebecca is looking at those. For those who would like to have that, you're welcome to have those guidelines, and then we'll be glad to take questions at this point.
Sure.
Oh, just yes, Madam Chairperson. That's all right. She was all right. No, I appreciate these being brought forward at this time. There's certainly been a lot of discussion at this table in the past about moving forward, and I appreciate the. My understanding of these is that they are somewhat similar to the University of Maryland guidelines that are in effect. Is that
correct? That's correct. And we actually shared the guidelines. The University of Maryland system board adopted a set of guidelines in February, and we used those as the basis for conversation with the faculty representatives and the academic staff representatives. We made a number of changes to fit the concerns, the particular concerns in our system and the nature of the way we work together. But this was very much based on those guidelines.
And they're just starting, so they probably haven't had much experience yet either with it. I think they're just passed in February.
Just in February, yes.
Are there other systems doing it, or are we?
We don't know of other systems that have guidelines, but we do know that many higher education institutions across the country are working in this area. In fact, when we began to ask our campuses what was going on, we uncovered a lot of work, communication between provost's office and faculties across our system about textbooks, putting much of this information out for faculty to consider as they make those choices. UW-Madison, for example, has a pretty extensive website on this issue. Many of our provosts shared communications at the beginning of the fall and winter spring semesters this year, as faculty members were choosing textbooks, guidance that they were providing. And so we had quite a bit of information to work with in developing these.
Regent Martell?
Thank you. Rebecca, as you mentioned, this board has discussed this subject a number of times in the past, and I appreciate particularly you're going forward with the interim guidelines now. It's sort of a trial balloon to see where the issues might be. I'm wondering about that. When I asked the question at the last time we talked about this, I was told that there are a number of possible objectors to some of these provisions, which seem to me just to be no-brainers. I mean, this is stuff that we could just sit down at a table and put together. One of them was that the faculty and staff would push back on some of the things, such as early designation and bundling and some of those issues. And then another one was that publishers would be difficult to deal with. Have you, to this point, identified where the pushback will be from those two sources as well as any other sources?
Well, we have in our conversations with the faculty and academic staff reps who represent the instructional academic staff who teach as well as faculty, had to really talk through what the issues are because, many of the conversations begin with, but this is in the purview of the faculty. You do understand that, don't you? And of course, I do understand that. But as we've gotten into it, there's been a lot of give and take and understanding of what the issues are, and I think we were able to develop these guidelines in a way that respected both sides of the issue in important ways. I think the issues with the textbook publishers are more difficult. I think that we're very happy to see the provisions in the Higher Education Act that address the textbook publishers as well as the universities, because we experience a time when there are fewer and fewer actual companies in the textbook market, and it's getting close to being a monopoly. Not quite, but in some fields it feels that way. So we don't have a lot of options on price, and we really need the legislative bodies to be paying attention to those issues for us as well. So I'm not anticipating that there is going to be large opposition to these guidelines. I think that given this, in the spirit of the conversations that we've already had, I believe we will come back with something that looks quite similar to this. But I do think that we need to be sure that we have the opportunity to talk not only with the representatives, who each of whom represents a governance body in our system, but also to give those governance bodies on the campuses the time to really think these issues through, make suggestions of what we might add to this that would make it stronger, perhaps. So I think that we will be able to come back with a policy sometime in the fall. It's just that governance process does take time, and we did not feel that we had sufficient time to go through the whole process. But we've already begun the process, and we really see this as a collaboration with our governance bodies in even bringing this to you for consideration today.
Regent Balbo?
I guess I need some encouragement. I'm a little discouraged by the use of the word encourage throughout the guidelines. And certainly would support steps, but I need to be maybe reassured that in the final policy, encouraged would be better defined. Because it really, to me, these guidelines aren't, they're very nebulous the way they're stated.
We will be working on that language, but I think that I think we need to reflect, find a balance between what's appropriate to require in a policy and the latitude that faculty members require in order to develop the most effective curriculum for the learning objectives that they have set in their courses. And so we're looking for that balance, and we will be, I think that you're correct in saying that we did want these guidelines to be fairly expansive in order to provide to get something on the table for the fall, and we'll be looking for places where we can strengthen them. At the same time, I think that there are a number of these issues that we can't, that will be difficult to require in a hard and fast policy manner, because it will not provide the flexibility for developing the most appropriate curriculum for teaching. I think that we want to be sure that the interests of the students are well represented in terms of on the textbook cost side, but we also need to be sure that their interests are well represented in terms of the learning environment that they need to have take place for it to be an effective educational experience.
Before Regent Crane, let me just suggest also, though, we could possibly get to where Mike is talking about with a very strongly worded intent statement or principle, set of principles that then lead to whatever those guideline revisions look like after governance. We can clearly say what we're intending to do to make it clear, clearly make it clear. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Regent Crane.
That's helpful.
Okay.
You partially answered a question that I had, Rebecca. It sounds as if you aren't necessarily expecting that there's going to be a lot of additional complexity added to these, or anything much more voluminous. That this is the guide for the discussion at this point. But I also wanted to ask whether one of the criteria is to have a policy that can change with the times. And I'm thinking especially about technology, and that must be changing a lot of the issue of textbooks themselves.
Yes, it is. And there are a number of different technological advances that various members of our faculty and instructional staff are already experimenting with. And we're expecting, as you know, the various new things coming along. I read just a few weeks ago that there's now a much better color ink in terms of what you can see visually on a computer screen, that people are thinking is really going to improve the ability to have a textbook be on an electronic book, the Kindle. I don't know how many of these things you're familiar with. I'm now getting right out into the area where I know probably less than you do. But there are issues on the horizon that are certainly going to change the way we look at textbooks, the way we look at how information and additional supplemental materials are provided in our hybrid courses and so on. So you're right, we need to provide guidelines that will provide for that.
And flexibility.
And flexibility, that's correct.
Regent Spector.
Rebecca, I was outside, I'm sorry, but I have a question about Roman numeral 3, D, if no one has asked about that.
Okay.
That's about where we're encouraging people not to order new textbooks just because there's a new edition, but rather to take a look at it.
Right.
It's the second sentence my question is about. In such cases, instructors are encouraged to list information pertinent to previous editions which either is or are of acceptable use. Does that mean the instructor would say, in my case, if I were teaching a law course, there's 3 cases in the new book that aren't in the old book. They're not subject to the copyright law because they're in the public domain from the Supreme Court. If you copy those cases, you could use the old textbook?
Yes, that's a good example. And, recognizing that there probably aren't going to be enough used copies of the older edition around, some students are going to need to buy the new edition.
Right.
So you'd have students with editions with different pagination. So you could include, that. You could provide information on what the additional information is. Those are both examples.
I think if that is the example, I would suggest that maybe that second sentence could be a little clearer than it is. That's all.
Okay.
I wondered, Rebecca, any other questions? I wondered whether, and maybe it's just the timing of when I read this, I particularly circled A, B, E, and F and wondered, could you give me some examples of how that saves costs? Maybe these aren't all intended to reduce the cost of textbooks, but I was trying to envision how all institutions within the system being encouraged to develop schedules for early adoption of textbooks in ways that are effective. How does that reduce costs?
It would reduce costs because if students have more time, if advance notice of what the textbooks are going to be for a course, they would have more time to locate a used copy, to shop around in all of the different opportunities to purchase books now, including all of the online environments, as opposed to a book that is added at the last minute where the only source would be a brand new copy at the campus bookstore.
Okay. What about the bundled, unbundled ones?
The bundled, unbundled ones, many textbooks now come with bundled software, so there may, in addition to the book, there may be a CD, there may be a software package, there may be another printed piece, like a set of exercises or exam answers, and if all you can do is buy the whole package, you pay for the whole thing, and in some cases the instructor may not be planning to use the whole thing. So if it's unbundled, then the student can buy only the piece that he or she is going to need for the course.
Okay, I get it. Regent King.
Thank you. Comment on letter D as well, and with Regent Spector's comments. It just seems to me this could be cause a lot of confusion and unnecessarily by encouraging the use of older editions of a textbook when a newer edition is available. It almost sounds like we're saying, well, we don't need to have the latest information. And information and technology are changing so rapidly. And I know when a new edition of a book comes out, it costs more. And then the old books are obsolete, and it is a lot larger cost for students. The rentals become obsolete. Publishers make more money. But on the other hand, as a university system, don't we want our students to have all the latest information, always the newest knowledge available?
Well, this is a situation where I think it's important that the way we write this includes the flexibility that you're suggesting that we need. There definitely are fields where every edition of a new edition of textbook includes vital important, very cutting-edge information that needs to be in the hands of our students. There are other fields, and there are particular textbook publishers where we know they bring out a new edition every year. And all they're doing is moving the things around. I mean, if you sit down and look at them side by side, you see that the content has not changed at all, or in such minor ways that it doesn't really make a substantive addition to the field that students need to have access to. And by doing that, and by saying you only can use the new edition, you're cutting off the opportunity for the student to purchase a used copy of the book from someone who took it last year and use that and keep their costs down. And I've had that happen in my own classes, where, I was kind of caught in, well, here's the new edition, I have to use it, so I would assign the new edition. And without me facilitating this, students came to me and said, well, I bought a copy from somebody who had this from you last year. Can you help me figure out what I'm going to miss from this? And by working with them, I was able to see there really wasn't much change. And as Mike suggested, provide them with the key piece that they needed, and then, we could go from there, and it saved them a lot of money. So I think that we've got to find that balance, and we've got to write guidelines in a way that help faculty members consider the options that they may or may not know are available to them, and then make the best decision for the students and for the course.
Okay, I would accept a motion to approve Resolution 11A, approving the UW System's interim guidelines for making textbooks affordable. Can I get a motion? Oh, you want to talk? I'm sorry. You sure? You're absolutely sure? Okay.
I move.
Okay, Balbo moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Here's your chance. Okay, there you go.
Could I just say, based on and let me first of all apologize, I was out for a little while too, so if I'm repeating something, I apologize. But I know from my conversations with our faculty leaders and faculty representatives, many of whom are here with us today, and I know Rebecca has the same experience, I want to assure the board that this issue is very much on their charts, and they want you to know that they're not resisting doing the right thing here. They want to do the right thing within the bounds of making sure, as Regent Keene was saying, they're providing the best education for their students. So it's very much, I think, a cooperative spirit that we all together enter a discussion of this topic on and move through these interim guidelines and on to something that will be firmer, longer-term policy, working with faculty colleagues and this board.
All right, now that he did, I would like to I just would like to encourage, as these guidelines get put together, if it's possible, I think transparency and openness here are really important going forward, both for the board to monitor progress going forward on the overall cost of textbooks for students, as well as for students to be able to have on the individual campus level where there is not a textbook rental program, the ability to sort of have that information on the cost of textbooks as far in advance and, on a micro level. So I just, as part of this policy adoption, I would hope that we might also be thinking at least a little bit about measurement opportunities for this particular issue and going forward, because I think that could be important both from a policy standpoint from the board, but also on a campus level for students and faculty.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Again, this is the Business and Finance and Education Committees who are voting, is my understanding, and we will put it on a, hopefully you'll all agree, we'll put it on a consent agenda, and the entire board will then vote. So for the Business and Finance and Education Committee, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Senior Vice President Martin and Associate Vice President Collison. The interim guidelines should serve the system above all our students, as well as campuses, to strive to be proactive and reduce the expenses faced by students in purchasing required textbooks. We'll look forward to seeing a proposed board policy sometime next fall. So we're now going to move on to 11B, which is UWM's presentation, Combating Alcohol and Drug Abuse. I think everyone in this room knows that UW-Milwaukee lost 2 students in the last few months. Lives cut tragically short by alcohol and drug abuse. This is obviously not a problem unique to UWM. All of our campuses confront the issue of alcohol and drug abuse. This abuse has a huge impact on the teaching and learning missions of our institutions, as well as on the individual lives of our students and their families, in addition to our students' sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, and loved ones. We'll hear this morning from Chancellor Santiago and Dr. Paul DuPont, Counseling Director of UWM's Norris Health Center, on how the campus is addressing the issue of alcohol and drug abuse in the wake of the loss of 2 students. Chancellor Santiago.
Thank you, Regent Davis. Substance use is a way of life for many college students. We also know that substance abuse is unfortunately a way of life as well. UWM campus was jarred by that reality twice this semester. UWM freshman Ali Raditz, 18 years of age, a 2008 honor graduate of Kettle Moraine High School, died February 21st from a combination of alcohol and prescription drugs. UWM freshman Luke Murphy, 19 years of age, of New London, died March 30th from a combination of alcohol, a prescription drug, and cough medicine. The tragedy is just enormous for the family, the campus, and the larger community. And we have a clear sense that the potential problems are starting long before young people enroll in college. This was the case in Whitefish Bay on March 1st, when a 13-year-old high school freshman died from the combination of prescription drugs. Some students enter our universities with substance abuse problems, and we accept our role in helping to provide appropriate education, counseling, and direction. The challenge before us is substantial. We know that more than 80% of UWM students are current alcohol users. We know students engage in high-risk drinking or binge drinking behavior. Our survey shows that 20% of UWM students report current marijuana use, and other drugs have a smaller but persistent presence among students. What do we do? This spring, we received additional directions of what we might do from the UWM Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Task Force. Fortunately, we have some appropriate programs already in place. For the 2008-2009 academic year, UWM had put in place the Make Good Decisions campaign. Its goal was to reduce problems related to the use of alcohol and other drugs. It's funded through a grant provided by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. The Make Good Decisions program is a program designed for students and by students. Make Good Decisions focuses on many safe drinking practices, such as how to compute your blood alcohol level while drinking, how to set limits and stick to them, and how to avoid becoming a victim after you have been drinking. Through the UWM Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Task Force, we learned what current programs to strengthen and what more we could do. To give you more information, I'd like to introduce Dr. Paul DuPont. He's a senior psychologist at the UWM Norris Health Center. Paul?
Thank you, Chancellor Santiago. I will provide a brief overview of some of the aorta prevention programs we're doing here on the UWM campus. I'll also describe the interventions we did immediately following the tragedies. I will talk about some of the programming we are planning for the future, partially in response to these tragedies, but part of our own growth plan that we had for aorta programs. I'm going to apologize in advance that many of the examples I give for programs are going to be very brief just due to the time constraints that we have. But I will talk in greater depth about the Make Good Decisions program so that you can get a better understanding of some of the components that are a part of these other aorta prevention programs. Okay, as Chancellor Santiago mentioned, the Make Good Decisions campaign was a result of a $5,000 grant from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. In the grant proposal, we wrote that students will design the program for other students, and that the only requirements for these students, the parameters to fit within, is that the intervention strategy they chose had a research basis, that it had suggested the results would be positive. The goal was to reduce problems related to alcohol and other drug abuse for UWM students, but for the DOT grant, it required the emphasis be on alcohol, or that be a strong component of it, and also that the focus was on safety in the neighborhoods, but we also broadened that to be more relevant to on-campus students. As I mentioned, students designed this program. We had 3 focus groups last April and May, in which students went through what they thought the biggest problems related to alcohol use, especially in the neighborhoods, what they thought should be done, and then the specifics of what they wanted. And they said, we want training. Train us to reach out to other students. So that's what we did. As Chancellor Santiago mentioned, over 90 students received training and materials. Much of the training was related to personal and peer safety. How do I stay safe, and how do I help my friends stay safe? Safe drinking practices was a big part of the program. Just some of the components were computing one's own personal BAC. When I drink on a regular night, as well as the nights that I drink a lot more, how high is my BAC getting? What is a safe drinking limit, and how do I stick with it once I've set that for myself? What also involved in that training were some of the dangers for overdose, including mixing alcohol and prescription drugs, symptoms of alcohol poisoning, and what to do if a friend exhibits some of those symptoms. We distributed promotional materials, refrigerator magnet with the signs and symptoms of alcohol poisoning and what to do, a plastic cup that's a standard drink cup, not the 18-ounce party cups that are seen in house parties, to really sensitize students to what we're talking about when we talk about one drink. Door hangers with alcohol safety messages on them. A big part of the program was the creation of the Make Good Decisions website. As you see at the top, there are a number of different tabs there with a lot of different information, different categories, but just a couple of those are blood alcohol concentration information. What are the variables that affect my blood alcohol concentration? What is a safe BAC? And there's a link to Wisconsin DOT website for them to put in their own drinking numbers and how high their BAC gets. Strategies for reducing their drinking to get to safer BACs. Another tab there is on intervention. What are the signs and symptoms of alcohol problems for me or for peers that I'm concerned about? Where do I go for help? And how do I help a peer who I may be concerned about in terms of their drinking or other substance use? Okay? We have multiple links across our campus and different web pages for the eChug, and we've promoted this. We've had it on our campus a number of years. And this is something that, through a subsequent DOT grant to System is providing the eChug for all of the campuses in the system. Okay, for those campuses that are currently having it, it's funding for an additional year. For those campuses who don't have it, it is funding for a year of the eChug. eChug has a lot of the information I just talked about in terms of blood alcohol concentration. It has a video on blood alcohol concentration, a lot of information. But what is unique about the eChug is that students can anonymously put in their own drinking information, and as well as family information, other personal information, and what it provides for them is a report. It's a synopsis of their own drinking pattern, their own drinking profile, that includes things such as what are the risk factors that I have right now that are risks for alcohol dependence, for alcoholism. Okay? How do I drink more safely? That personal profile is a part of effective brief interventions for college students. Personally relevant feedback, not just information that many students say was part of their high school health class. Okay, in terms of the campus-wide immediate response to the tragic events, we did an awful lot of interviews with student media and with the larger media in the Milwaukee area. Our focus was not on the specifics of these events. Our focus was on how how drinking and especially mixing drinking with drugs is especially hazardous. Taking care of others, not just personal responsibility for oneself, but really monitoring our friends. Going back to the Make Good Decisions program, one of the slogans of that was "Don't leave a Panther behind," emphasizing that message. Emails were sent out to the entire university community. Included in those emails were resources for help. Other parts of our immediate response to the events, the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs convened an AOTA work group, which is continuing to meet. A big part of that being how to pull together and most efficiently do AOTA programming involving multiple departments across student affairs. We already do that a lot through the AOTA task force, but it's an additional level to facilitate coordination in an integrated approach. Unfortunately, 2 weeks prior to Allie Raditz's death, the first student death, in an AOTA task force meeting, we were discussing the anecdotal reports of what seemed to be an increase in drug use on the campus. An outcome of that meeting was we need to look at more extensive programming focused on drugs in addition to alcohol. We had programming in place, but expanded programming along those lines. Unfortunately, within 2 weeks, Allie Raditz died. But one development, following Allie's death, there was an emergency meeting of the task force to plan an immediate strategy for intervening. I already mentioned some of those steps. But the task force, in its chair, Sarah Belstock, developed a lengthy document for, this is our plan for the future, for comprehensive AOTA programming, going beyond what we're currently doing on the campus. I have extra copies up here if anyone is interested in those. What we're doing for the future, Alcohol-Wise, a 1-hour online educational intervention primarily about alcohol, but also involves other drug use, especially the potentially lethal combination with other drugs. All incoming first-year students will be expected to take this prior to coming to campus. Also part of this program is an email sent to them asking them to take it again 3 weeks after 3 weekends that they've been on campus. Why is that important? Research shows that drinking patterns tend to be established within the first 6 weeks of someone's college career. If we can intervene as the patterns are being established, hopefully we can nip in the bud problems that are beginning to evolve. We're going to, as I mentioned before, expand the other drug aspects of our AOTA prevention programming. The Center for Addiction and Behavioral Health Research here on campus a year ago was talking about making a research agenda as young adult drinking problems. In fact, in your materials, in your folder, is a workshop they are doing the week after next here in Milwaukee. An outcome hoped for as a result of this workshop is the creation of a research consortium in southeastern Wisconsin that includes not only college campuses, but community agencies and community stakeholders to become involved in research to prevent young adult drinking problems. We're going to take a close look at the UW System AOTA survey. It was just in the field to students across the system at the end of February and the beginning of March. This is done every 2 years. We're going to take a close look at that data for what's happening in terms of our campus. Just an aside, this system survey was an outgrowth of a directive from the board for a unified approach to the assessment of AOTA across the system. This has been very helpful information, and AOTA coordinators across the system appreciate this data. We find it very helpful. In terms of counseling, my department, in terms of our immediate response to the tragic events, aggressive outreach to affected students and staff. We were in the dorms talking with students on the floor of Allie Raditz, to working with university housing staff that were affected by the trauma of the students that they're working with. We reached out to the members of the apartments off campus where some of the tragic events happened. Aggressive promotion of our availability to students and staff. Immediate triaging of any students calling for help at the University Counseling Center. Longer-term counseling response, we had one additional staff member that was hired in September. He has AOTA expertise. We have another position for next year. This will also require AOTA expertise. A retired staff member this year opened up a position that we are currently hiring for. AOTA expertise as a part of their requirements. At the end of all this hiring, we will have more than half of our counseling staff with AOTA expertise, as well as expertise to treat general mental health problems. We work closely with the AOTA task force to make sure our efforts are coordinated with theirs. And lastly, just treatment issues. A number of different treatment issues for AOTA problems on college campuses, but just one issue here related to prescription pain medications. We saw earlier this year developing more students calling, seeking services or information about narcotics use, prescription pain medication use. We're seeing more of it, or at least students are calling us for more of that treatment. Now, opiate addiction treatment is extremely difficult to do. One aspect is with opiate addiction, the withdrawal process is incredibly long, protracted, and painful. It is hard for people to stay clean when they're going through that much pain. And what often helps is medication to treat the withdrawal symptoms to minimize those. It's hard for many students to do it without that. This medication is very expensive, hundreds of dollars a month for this medication. We have seen more and more students without health insurance for general mental health issues as well as for addictions. Fewer students have health insurance. As more parents are unemployed, fewer students have access to health insurance through their parents. The result is not enough resources for students with substance abuse issues when they really need it. Thank you.
I have a question, and
Yes.
I guess of Dr. DuPont, especially on that latter part around insurance and not having insurance and the like. In my experience in my day job, one of the things that we are stepping up, if you will, is engagement of parents in the education and awareness issue. And I'm wondering if there's maybe I missed that in the earlier part.
Yes.
But I just wonder whether there's some, as part of future outreach, making available your best knowledge and your best expertise to have conversations with parents so they can have conversations with their children that then allow the students to then seek the help maybe in a more proactive way when they're under.
Yes, we are. As a part of orientation, we are looking at expanding that for more information for parents with a special focus. How do I talk to my son or daughter? In a meeting for the Vice Chancellor's AOTA work group was maybe parents aren't the way in, and how do parents engage an aunt or an uncle or a friend of one of the students, a parent of one of the students' friends, who may open up dialogue about some of the risks associated with excessive drinking if the student isn't open to listening to their own parent. This is a part of our efforts to really expand those interventions. It's very important.
Regent Woolman.
Thank you, sir. I was wondering if you could just briefly speak to us regarding how you evaluate the effectiveness of your programs.
The Make Good Decisions program was very hard to evaluate the impact of that. Okay, one of the things we're going to look for was hospital admission data. We can't get that, unfortunately, for cases of alcohol poisoning. We were hoping UWM contracts with Milwaukee Police to provide enhanced enforcement. We're going to look at the number of tickets they were issuing, the number of disturbances there. But that data is very inconsistent. So to do a pre and post wouldn't have given us valid data. That community sort of approach. Prevention programs in general are very hard to evaluate. We're making every effort we can. As a result of the training of Make Good Decisions, we evaluated the impact on the trainees. And we asked those students, we gave them very brief evaluation forms and said, if you didn't do an intervention or a training on your floor in the dorm, please pass out these evaluation forms and give them back to us. We want to know if the messages are getting across and how students are responding. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten that data back from students. So we're attempting to.
Regent Crane.
Would you, one or both of you, address the complexity of this issue along with the legal drinking age issues?
Boy. The potential for the discussion about lowering it to 18 and opening up the dialogue for that. I just have my own personal feelings. There's an awful lot of research out there, a lot of very strong research that shows that raising the drinking age to 21 saves lives. I believe it's the second leading cause, first leading cause of death for young adults is alcohol-involved automobile crashes. Those decreased with the increase in the drinking age. Some people dispute that data and have called it into question, but it's pretty hard data. At least along those lines, maintaining a drinking age of 21, the data really suggests that is going to keep saving lives.
I guess I was also thinking that the complexity of addressing the issues when in fact the legality issue is there and then going on from there must be difficult.
In terms of our programming, when it's 21 and we're talking to 18 and 19-year-olds about drinking, what I didn't emphasize here is whenever we're doing the interventions, we say for those students who choose to drink, and we're not encouraging drinking. It's against the law if that's one of the factors involved here. But for those of you who have decided you are going to drink, this is how we do it safely. So that is a part of how we're saying it, that this is an illegal behavior if they choose to drink. If that addresses your question.
Any other? Yes, Regent Loftus.
Should I ask Chancellor Santiago a question?
Absolutely. Is it on this topic?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Rather a wide topic.
Oh, okay.
In your email of May 7th,
yes,
on point 2, you state that UWM commits to not disciplining any student who reports an emergency involving another student or companion. And it goes on. And then you say, however, if it is discovered that a student is aware of a person in serious and immediate distress but does not seek help, UWM will refer that student's failure to act to the Dean of Students' office for investigation and potential discipline. Are you only talking here about alcohol and drug emergencies, or what is the definition of an emergency?
It is only alcohol and drug emergency. And what we found, particularly in the last two cases, is that students did not respond quickly enough to their companions that were in distress. And we wanted to make sure that the students could feel it was a safe environment to do so. It was important that we do so. And that's the purpose of my email to the students. And it is in those situations that we will either take action if what we consider the appropriate response to a student in an emergency is not done, or we will move the students so that they will do the right things and make the calls to 911, make the calls to our police department so that we can help a student that is in jeopardy.
Okay, I want to thank Chancellor Santiago and Dr. DuPont. We appreciate the opportunity to take this topic on this morning, as sad as it is and challenging as we know it to be. And we appreciate the efforts you are taking at UWM and those being taken at our other UW schools as well to combat what truly is a societal problem. That concludes the joint meeting of the Education and Business and Finance and Audit Committees. We stand adjourned at 12:10 p.m.
Okay, and I remind you, we are now served the best boxed lunches UW-Milwaukee has available. So, we're here.